Welcome to the first of a three-part webinar series about the journey of job seekers with disabilities. So my name is Gabby Nagel, and my role at Getting Hired is community outreach and marketing for job seekers with disabilities. So at the end of each of these webinars, you'll see a few questions pop up on a new page in your browser asking for your thoughts about the webinar. So please feel free to let us know how we did and what you found useful and what we could improve on. Also, if there's any topics you'd like more information about, please do let us know so that we can continuously improve the resources we provide to help you in your employment search. So again, just a quick run through with the logistics. Audio should be available through your speakers. If not, you can see the phone number there on the screen or click it in the chat box and the conference code's there. If you have any questions at all during the presentation, you can also type those in the chat box, and I will get to them at the end of the presentation and do my best to answer all of those questions. We'll also be recording this presentation, so there will be a recording of it uploaded on our website next week, and we will email you with the link of where you can find the recording in case you aren't able to view the whole thing or you're having audio problems. So a big thank you to our Getting Hired employer partner, United Health Group, who's made this webinar possible. United Health Group are America's largest health and managed care organization, and they're hiring nationwide. You can have a look at their jobs right now. There's over 4,000 jobs in over 30-plus states, and those are available on gettinghired.com. So today's agenda, we'll focus the first part of this job seeker's journey. We'll be looking at the job hunt. So I'm going to walk you through the role of a hiring manager and recruiter. We'll be discussing the most common job seeker frustrations, provide some insight into the length of time job search processes can take, and we'll also highlight some key points in identifying a job that's right for you and successfully connecting with the right employers as well. So understanding the hiring manager and the recruiter's role. Just to start off, it's useful sometimes to take a look at the wider disability employment landscape. 20% of the U.S. has some type of disability. It's the largest diversity group in the country. And in case you're wondering how we use the term disability, the Americans with Disabilities Act, or the ADA, defines an individual with a disability as a person who has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. This could also be a person who has a history or a record of such an impairment, or a person who is perceived by others as having such an impairment. 5.9 million of this population are in the workforce currently, but the unemployment rate is double to those without a disability. Most large organizations have hundreds of open positions posted at any given time. It might interest you to know that the first resume is received within 200 seconds after a position is posted. That's less than 4 minutes. The average job posting receives over 250 resumes. This is the competition that a person is up against when applying for just one job. Now, the average recruiter spends 6 seconds reviewing a resume. So imagine when you have 250 resumes and hundreds of job postings, recruiters just scan resumes and try to pick out the best ones. Or they often, after a person applies, they will run a keyword search to see if anyone in the applicant database meets their keyword search. So this means they have a high probability of missing some very qualified candidates who may not have included those specific keywords in their applications or resumes. So that's just one tip when you're thinking about the skills or the qualifications to highlight. Think about the most important aspects of that role and make sure that those keywords or any keywords that recruiters or hiring managers even could be searching for applicants under are really included in your resume and in your application and any online profiles you might have as well. 60% of applicants do not meet the basic requirements. So this means about 150 resumes received are not displaying the correct qualifications that they are asking for in the position. 57% of hiring managers also say that they've caught a lie on a resume. Even the resumes that did make it through, more than half of those were found to have inaccuracies. So this just gives you an idea of the sort of landscape and the kind of deadlines and time restrictions that people that are recruiting are really working towards, and the sheer number of applications and resumes that they're having to get through in a very short, often quite narrow time period. Have you ever read a job description, made it to the requirements section, and immediately eliminated yourself from the position without applying? The distinction between essential and preferred requirements is sometimes a gray area. So we'll look here at job descriptions. The requirements or job posts can be created from a template. So often just cutting and pasting descriptions or, using a ready-made template speeds up the process for people that are posting job listings. So that means that, it's quite probable that the job descriptions are not always fully accurate. Educational and skill requirements may not be clearly defined. So, for example, specifying minimum requirements as an associate's degree in a related field, but then in the preferred requirements, stating a master's degree. So that's a pretty big swing in requirements. Essential requirements may not always be essential. Do you really need to lift 50 pounds working in a call center? Doubtful. So what do? Well, read job descriptions carefully. Look at some areas that might seem out of place in the essential requirements, and if you feel you can get a good understanding of what the core objectives are for that position, and you could meet them, either with or without an accommodation, apply. Job titles are also often written using company speak. So most companies are getting better at this, but it does still show up on postings with internal language. So you may also have to read in between the lines when it comes to some job titles. Here at Getting Hired, we conduct our own research on a monthly and yearly basis to gather insights from our job seekers. We do this to get a better understanding of your experiences searching for employment. Through your feedback, we identify the difficulties you're facing, such as accessibility issues, and we can then educate employers on how they can be more successful in hiring and retaining people with disabilities. We also try to gauge what information or resources job seekers could benefit from. Here are some of the results from the most recent survey on what frustrations job seekers with disabilities are facing. So you can see the highest percentage of frustrations would be little to no response from jobs I've applied to. 58% say little to no response from employers where I have interviewed. 56%, not enough positions that fit my skills and qualifications. 37%, positions that fit my skills and qualifications but do not pay enough. And 20%, job descriptions that are too restrictive or specific. So this kind of refers to the unclear or possibly unnecessary narrow requirements used in job descriptions that we were just talking about. Lastly, 19% of websites are not accessible. So you can see most of these frustrations are not unique to job seekers with disabilities. They're common to job seekers in general, especially the lack of response about your application or interview. But as well as experiencing many of these common frustrations, we know that many job seekers with disabilities also face additional barriers just trying to access the job application. So the area of web accessibility is something we talk a lot about to our employers. In part 2 of this webinar series, we take a closer look at the inaccessibility of some job applications and job testing. And we also talk about how to request an accommodation to overcome these sorts of obstacles. So how long does the job search take? Well, 44% of our job seekers with a disability have taken a year or more before getting a job. And that's almost split in half. 40% have taken 1 to 6 months. Keep in mind as well, the average interview to offer takes 2 to 4 weeks, depending on the company. And the average number of interviews for one position is 2 to 3. So the answer is longer than you'd like. After you get to an interview, it can also take a month or 2 for a decision to be made. So don't expect to receive a call back right after you apply or even a few weeks after. Job posts stay up for days or weeks at a time. Then they review the applicants, make decisions, schedule meetings or phone interviews, have on-site interviews, sometimes more than one, and then finally extend an offer to a candidate. Now we'll look at how you can hopefully save yourself a lot of time and energy by only targeting jobs that are really right for you. And this is where the quality over quantity comes in. So sometimes when searching for employment, people think it's a numbers game. Like the more resumes and applications you send out, the more chance you'll get a bite. But that's rarely successful and often ends up taking more of your time and more of your energy than just focusing on a few roles and really taking your time to make those applications the absolute best you can. So prospecting potential employers. This is where you do your homework. Whatever industry you're in, you've got to be relevant to the employer's business objectives. Think about how your skills can stay relevant. Do they need updating? Something that's worth thinking about every so often. To really impress potential employers, you need to do the legwork. Use your researching time to build a solid understanding of the company. What value does the role you're applying for really add to the company mission? What developments or changes have there been in the past? What growth and progress is forecast for the future? You know, knowing things like who the biggest companies in that field are, what projects and initiatives they're working on. Where do you see yourself fitting into your industry? As I said, changes in growth, what changes have been in the company you're looking at, who the leaders and the experts are in that industry as well. Following them, we'll talk about online activity a little bit later, but just knowing as well who the leaders and experts are, who's making the headlines, what topics have been making industry news, what kind of brand has the company you're looking at really created for themselves. All of those factors can really, really be helpful in understanding what the hiring manager is looking for and what criteria will actually get you in the door and in front of an interviewer. When learning all you can about potential employer companies, also look for information on their diversity and inclusion policies on their website. The most progressive and forward-thinking companies will be actively showing how they are creating a diverse workforce and an inclusive workplace, and trying to accommodate the needs of all their employees in order to get their very best performance. The incentive for businesses to support their employees' needs is growing. Besides the spread of ethical and green consumerism, there's also been developments in the law to promote diverse and inclusive work cultures. So we're going to talk about the legal aspect of inclusion and discrimination in part 2 of this 3-part webinar series. But just, taking the time to see if the company has any values or any information or policies on inclusion and diversity can really give you a great insight into how forward-thinking they are, how likely it could be that they offer some kind of flexibility in terms of schedules or hours or, anything that can kind of help you to give your best performance, really. So an example of this is just one of Getting Hired's employer partners, Exelon. Exelon's diversity has been recognized with several awards, including Equality Forum's International Business Leadership 2013, GI Jobs Top Military Friendly Employers 2008 to 2013, Human Rights Campaign's Best Places to Work 2011 to 2013, and there's a lot more. As well as several employee inclusion initiatives, they also use university programs and military and veteran initiatives, as well as Getting Hired to actively diversify their recruitment. You can find a lot more information about their diversity efforts on their website, and you can search all of their open jobs on gettinghired.com. So also, in targeting the right kind of jobs, there are some things you really should be asking yourself before, thinking about whether a role is worth going for, and also just trying to think about what role you can play in your industry. So will you be able to perform the required job tasks, solve key problems, and achieve results with or without an accommodation? Some other questions to ask yourself and to research are, what are the basic functions to be performed or managed in that role? What are the key results expected in each area? What are the specific problems and challenges that must be met, short-term and long-term? Which skills and knowledge are absolutely necessary to meet the job objectives successfully? The third component of a good fit is, will you be motivated by the job's requirements to perform well? So ask yourself, what motivates you? What types of activities bore you? How often will you need to perform each of the job tasks? It's also worth thinking about the work environment or the culture. So, this goes back to what kind of brand the company is actively trying to portray. Is it conducive to your needs and your expectations and your values? All of these things are really important factors to consider when finding something that will be right for you and something that you can see yourself, really sticking in and hopefully progressing in. So social media. So you've Googled the employers, but what will they see when they Google you? Many companies are now using social media to post their jobs, so this won't be new news. But it's not just LinkedIn, it's across social media platforms. For example, on Twitter, there are many @job postings accounts, as well as job hashtags like #job posting, #hiring, #work for us, etc. It's becoming increasingly popular for companies to hire people based on their social media activity. This has been through both interacting with the company's social presence and also building an impressive social presence themselves by showcasing their work and their skills, generating successful engagement with their followers. This includes creative jobs like graphic design, writers, photographers, marketing, but also jobs that involve networking and business strategy, entrepreneurial skills, sales, other skills like that. So think about how you can engage with the companies you want to work for and how you can demonstrate your value to their business. So these are just a couple of stats from JobBite social recruiting survey. When asking recruiters across their membership, they found that LinkedIn is 94% of the social networks that recruiters use in recruiting. You can see Facebook is 66%, Twitter 52%, but Google Plus and YouTube and others are also in there, slightly less, but they'll be growing, especially through 2015, and they're expected to grow even more in 2016. 93% of recruiters will review a candidate's social profile before making a hiring decision. So build your professional online profile. Build a network of contacts and resources to connect with people in your field and stay current with industry news, events, and opportunities. Make sure your LinkedIn profile is up to date and active. Spend some time online finding out how to make the most of your LinkedIn profile. Join relevant groups and conversations. Make use of the pool of information and resources being shared. Build your industry knowledge. Contribute. Build and share useful resources, and be proactive in making the most of any opportunities you find. Twitter is also fantastic for staying up to date with your industry's news and getting involved in conversations. On the flip side of the great opportunities from social media is the negative impact your social presence can have on your job opportunities. Be extra careful of what you make public on your social site. Always think about the impression you're giving potential employers researching you. 55% of recruiters have reconsidered a candidate based on their social profile, with 61% of those reconsiderations being negative. So there's a few examples here of backlashes from people's social activity having a negative impact on their employment and on their career prospects. East Texas firefighter fired for Facebook comment on Charleston shooting. J.Crew fires VP after social media backlash. Zoo employee fired over racist social media posts. North Miami senior high school principal loses job over post on police incident in McKinney, Texas. County employee fired after Twitter comments. So these are not hard to find. There are lots and lots of occurrences every day of people really seeing the negative impact of what they're doing in, what they think is their own time on social networking. But that is what recruiters and employers are using these days to assess what kind of person you are and what kind of value you'll bring to their company, and will you fit into their work culture. So it's just something that you've got to be aware of today. So of course, prospecting potential employers, there's also print and professional communities. So, alumni magazines, newspapers, business journals, associations. You can find a lot of trade associations online now as well as in print. The ASAE, which is the Center for Association Leadership, they have a fantastic website they're basically a leader in that, in bringing all the different trade associations together. So they're a great resource for finding whatever association you're searching for. Career fairs also are a great opportunity to network and to get a feel for different companies and positions. You might already know Getting Hired offer regular virtual career fairs that enable job seekers to connect with inclusive employers actively looking for job seekers with disabilities. So the great thing about online career fairs is you can do them from home. That can also be a plus if you are reluctant talking to employers, and if your disability is quite visible, that can be something that a lot of job seekers are sensitive about or are cautious about. So the great thing about your first impressions with these recruiters or these hiring managers is what you say online. They can't judge you on anything else other than the impression you're giving them online. If you're interested in working for the federal government, there are special hiring authorities for people with disabilities. You may have heard of Schedule A. That's just one of them. So it helps individuals with disabilities to get, keep, and advance in federal jobs that are matched to their skills and abilities. So utilizing Schedule A hiring authority to fill a vacancy allows federal agencies to avoid using the traditional and sometimes lengthy competitive hiring process. You can get more information about Schedule A and how it could potentially benefit you, getting a federal job through the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, or the EEOC as they're known. You can also find all of the federal open positions listed on USA Jobs website. So you're eligible for a Schedule A appointment if you're a person with a severe physical or mental disability and meet the requirements of the job in question. There's no specific definitions as to what qualifies as a severe mental or physical disability under Schedule A. So that means federal agencies are free to interpret the requirements broadly. Getting Hired does work with federal contracting companies, so it's worth searching our jobs board. If you're only interested in federal jobs, then you may want to search USA Jobs website as well. EEOC has a lot of information about Schedule A. There's currently a big incentive for all federal contractors and subcontractors to hire people with disabilities because of an amendment to Section 503 of the Rehabilitation Act. So this is, this has been making headlines. A lot of people know about this, but a lot of people don't. We'll be discussing these legal changes and what they mean for both employers and job seekers with disabilities in the next webinar. So in Part 2, we'll also be understanding more about the application process. We'll be talking about disclosure, disclosing your disability to employers and the kind of issues around that, and requesting accommodations for job applications, for interviews, and once you're in the workplace as well. You can follow Getting Hired and stay updated with our resources and events for job seekers. So we're all over social media. You can find our website, www.gettinghired.com. We're also on Facebook. You can find us on LinkedIn and Twitter and Google+ as well. So now it's time for any questions. So if you have any questions at all about anything we've talked about, feel free to type that in the chat box now, and we're running a little bit over, but I will try my best to get through all of the questions that anyone has. So there's one question here about finding jobs working from home. So that's a really, really common question. Flexible work schedules, including working from home and flexible hours, are becoming a lot more commonplace. Many employers offer this option for specific positions, but others can be negotiated. You know, often this is further down the line, but it's possible that this is something you could negotiate in an interview. You know, if you had presented yourself as a desirable candidate and the employer was really interested and really wanted you to be part of the company, and of course, dependent on the job role, assuming it can, you know, still be performed successfully outside of the office, then, you know, these days a lot more people are negotiating about flexible working hours and working from home with employers. You can look specifically for positions that are advertised as working remotely, but this will severely limit your job options. There's only so many jobs that can be performed from home, and there's only so many employers that will offer those jobs. So depending on what your personal situation is, it's worth considering alternative options. You know, possibly discussing what support could be put in place to enable you to work from the office, whether it's a transport issue or, you know, assistive technology being set up in the workplace, childcare. There could be the possibility of flexible working hours as well to enable you to work from home or from the office at different times to accommodate your circumstances. Or maybe you're able to work from home on some days and from the office on others. Before you restrict your job options to only work from home jobs, just make sure you've considered all of these alternatives too. And whether you decide on any of these options or to work from home, it's best not to approach employers with this issue straight away. So I would first try to gain the employer's interest and, you know, try to convince them of your value to the company, talk to them more, and make a great impression before you, you know, just jump in and ask, what are your work from home jobs? Because they're just a lot less likely to want to offer you that flexibility or, you know, to go out of their way. They're also far more likely to consider these accommodations, you know, if you've presented yourself as a desirable candidate. So, you know, in online career fairs when you're approaching employers, just make sure you've considered all your work options thoroughly and just make the best impression of yourself you can. Have we got any other questions before we run out of time? Anything else anyone would like to know? There's a question about the best way to talk to employers about your disability. This is something we're really going to be looking at in the next webinar, so I won't go into too much detail now, but I'll just say that it's down to personal choice of what you're comfortable with when you decide to disclose your disability to an employer, or if at all you decide to disclose. You never need to explain your disability if you don't want to, but depending on your disability, if you require accommodations made, then, you know, trying to get those accommodations before your interview is something that, you know, you may have to bring up those accommodations in order to be able to perform at your best in the interview. So it really depends on your personal situation. You may, of course, as we discussed earlier, you might need an accommodation just to access the job application itself. So that could be something that some people end up discussing before they get an interview, or even just to get through the application. So you really need to consider what makes the most sense for you. In the next part, we'll be talking more about this and the government changes about disclosing your disability and the federal contractor and subcontractor laws as well. So, in those instances where contractors are actively trying to meet a quota of a certain number of people with disabilities in their workforce, being open about your disability can actually be a benefit in those situations. And as I said earlier, it's in a lot of employers' benefit to show that they are being, a modern, a forward-thinking, and inclusive, and a diverse company. So there's more than one or two options to think about. There's a few issues that, are useful to assess before you decide when it's appropriate to either bring it up at all or to request accommodations or anything around that. One of the persons just asked, when is the next webinar? That's a very good question. So we actually have a webinar. The next one will be on the 22nd of January, but that one is about inclusive internships and how to have a successful internship and how having that kind of work-based learning experience with an employer can really boost your prospects. But the second part of this three-part webinar will be at the beginning of February. So we are basically continuing this three-part webinar at the beginning of each month. So, the beginning of January is the first part, beginning of February is the second part, beginning of March is the third part. And in between those, we have webinars on other subjects. But it should be, you can actually find the exact date on our website, which I will just pull up now. So if you go to www.gettinghired.com/events, you can see a list of the upcoming webinars for up till May. And part 2 of this, I can see, is going to be February 10th. So February 10th, 12 o'clock, the same time. All the webinars are at 12 o'clock. You can see the schedule on the site if there's any other webinars you're interested in joining. And they'll be on all different subjects around career development. They're not all open for registration at the moment, but we will be updating that regularly. So, you should be able to register for whatever upcoming webinars are in the next month or so. So registration for the second part should open pretty soon. And if you set up a job seeker account, you'll receive our email newsletter for job seekers, and that always has updates about upcoming webinars and how to register as well. So it's a good way to stay up to date if you are interested in learning other subjects around this. So thank you very much for joining. I hope everyone found it useful. As I said, some questions will pop up when you leave the webinar. If you could just take a few seconds to just tell us what you think, if there's anything you'd like more information about, that's really, really useful. And hopefully we can provide something that will support you further in your job-seeking efforts. So thank you very much again, and have a great weekend.